Escape the Demiurge's eternal loop. Hidden Gnostic escape. What if, in the Archons' prison they erased, the whispers of doubt that slither into your quietest moments weren't echoes of your own heart, but transmissions from beyond the veil? What if those shadows of fear, envy, and guilt, emotions that coil around your soul like invisible chains, were not born from your experiences, but engineered frequencies, broadcast by the Archons to dim your divine spark and lock you in an eternal loop of illusion? They told you these feelings were human, inevitable, a cross to bear in this fleeting life. But the suppressed truths of Nag Hammadi whisper otherwise. They are the tools of the false god, the Demiurge's arsenal to keep you tethered to the prison of the soul, far from the radiant unity of the pleroma. You, awake soul, have felt it, the subtle pull, the way a wave of unexplained envy crashes over you during another's joy, or guilt gnaws at your edges for sins long faded. It's not coincidence, it's interference. The Gnostics, those ancient rebels who dared to read between the lines of creation, warned of this in scrolls buried for centuries beneath Egyptian sands. Discovered in 1945 at Nag Hammadi, these texts, the Apocryphon of John, the Hypostasis of the Archons, paint a cosmos not of benevolent design, but of cosmic hijacking. The Demiurge, that blind architect who mistook his flawed realm for divinity, birthed the Archons as his enforcers, parasitic entities, rulers of frequency, who cannot create but only imitate, distort, and feed. And their favorite harvest, the low vibrations of the human heart, fear that paralyzes, envy that divides, guilt that binds. But you are here, drawn by that inner knowing, that flicker of Gnosis, direct Gnosis, the unmediated sight that pierces the veil. This is no accident. The Archons' prison they erased from history thrives on your unawareness, but your presence signals remembrance. In the Archons' prison they erased, the secret hidden about the soul's prison is that your breath is the technology of liberation. Each conscious inhalation is a rebellion against the false god, a vibrational decree that you are the sovereign universe the Archons desperately try to cage. We are not here to recite forgotten lore. We are here to activate it, to reclaim the divine spark that no illusion can extinguish. Prepare yourself, for once you discern the transmissions from the truth, the loop begins to fracture, and soon you'll wield the Gnosis that severs their hold, not just on your emotions, but on the very fabric of your reality. First key, the transmissions unmasked. Low frequencies as Archon weapons. In the shadowed codices of Nag Hammadi, the Archons are unveiled not as horned fiends of medieval art, but as subtle architects of distortion, beings who dwell just beyond the threshold of perception, feeding on the chaos they sow. The traditional tales, those sanitized by the early church fathers in councils like Nicaea under Constantine's iron gaze, reduced them to metaphors or dismissed them as heresy. Demons of the flesh, they called them, external tempters to be exorcised through ritual and rote prayer. But the suppressed truth, etched in Coptic script and hidden from Roman flames, reveals a far more insidious design. The Archons as frequency parasites, masters of emotional alchemy who transmute your innate light into their sustenance. Consider the emotions of low frequency: fear that grips like a vice, envy that poisons quiet triumphs, guilt that whispers unworthiness in the dead of night. The Church, inheritor of imperial control, framed these as personal failings, sins to confess in shadowed booths. debts to a wrathful God demanding penance. Yet in the Archons, prison they erased. These are no accidents of the human condition. They are deliberate broadcasts, engineered signals from the Demiurge's realm to anchor your divine spark in the mud of illusion. The Apocryphon of John describes the Archons as rulers of the seven spheres, each governing a planetary vibration, but their true dominion lies in the psychic realm. They cannot touch the pleroma, that boundless fullness of pure consciousness, but they can mimic its echoes, twisting them into lures that keep souls cycling in forgetfulness. Fear, the Archons' sharpest blade, is not your inheritance, but their injection, a frequency that contracts the soul, making the vastness of the pleroma feel like a distant dream. Envy, that green serpent, divides you from your fellow sparks, fostering isolation where unity should reign. Guilt, the heaviest chain, convinces you of separation from source, a lie that the false god whispers to harvest your light. These transmissions arrive unbidden, disguised as your own voice, a sudden dread before a new beginning, a pang of resentment at another's grace, a shame that lingers from shadows long past. The Church amplified this deception, burning Gnostic libraries and branding Gnosis as blasphemy. For to know the self as divine would unravel their hierarchies of control. But herein lies your empowerment. Recognizing the transmission dissolves its power. The divine spark within you, that fragment of the true source, resonates only with truth. When fear arises, it is not to consume you, but to invite discernment. Pause now. Inhale deeply. Feel the breath as a blade of light slicing through the veil. Ask, is this mine or an echo of the prison? In that question, Gnosis ignites, the direct knowing that severs the Archons. Feed. You are not the victim of these waves. You are the observer, the sovereign who chooses alignment with the pleroma. And as you reclaim this, the prison weakens, for the Archons thrive on identification, not awareness. But this is only the threshold. Knowing the weapons is the beginning. Understanding their forge in the Demiurge's design reveals the deeper architecture of control. Second key, the forge of the false god. How the Demiurge engineers. Emotional chains delve deeper into the suppressed scrolls, and the architecture of the prison unfolds like a cosmic blueprint long concealed. The hypostasis of the Archons, one of the jewels unearthed at Nag Hammadi, lays bare the Demiurge's origin. Not the benevolent creator of orthodox hymns, but a flawed emanation from Sophia's solitary longing. A lion-faced tyrant who, in ignorance, proclaimed himself sole god. The Church, in its fusion with Roman might under Constantine, recast this as allegory or outright fiction, preserving only the patriarchal god of thunder and judgment. Yet, the erased truth pulses through the lines. The Demiurge, Yaldabaoth, birthed the Archons as extensions of his blindness, 7 rulers tied to the wandering stars, 365 lesser ones governing the days, a vast machine calibrated to frequencies of discord. In the Archons' prison they erased, the false god's genius lies not in overt tyranny, but in the subtlety of emotional forging. Fear is the foundation stone, envy the mortar, guilt the lock that seals the soul in recurring loops. These are not random afflictions, but programmed resonances, designed to vibrate at the Demiurge's pitch, keeping the divine spark veiled in matter's shadow. The traditional view, peddled in cathedrals and creeds, attributes suffering to original sin, a collective fall demanding eternal vigilance. But the Gnostic revelation, branded heresy and consigned to desert jars, exposes the slight. The Demiurge's realm is a counterfeit pleroma, a hall of mirrors where emotions become the chains you forge yourself, believing them self-wrought. Envision it. The Archons, those cosmic wardens, do not assault with fire or fang. They infiltrate the subtle body, the astral currents where thought meets feeling. Envy arises not from lack, but from an induced fracture, a whisper that your spark is lesser, fueling division where the pleroma knows only wholeness. Guilt, that insidious echo, replays as a karmic debt, binding you to cycles the Demiurge scripted to harvest your light anew. The Church Fathers, guardians of the false god's narrative, wove this into doctrine. Confess your guilts, envy your betters, fear the divine wrath. Constantine's edicts ensured the Gnostic maps, texts like the Gospel of Truth, were scattered, their gnosis dismissed as delusion, preserving a faith of submission over sovereignty. Yet empowerment blooms in this unveiling. The Demiurge's forge is no eternal bastion. It crumbles under the flame of remembrance. Your emotions are transmissions, yes, but you hold the receiver. Nous is the decoder, the inner sight that reveals the signal's source. Feel the envy stir. It is the Archon's probe, testing the veil's thickness. Respond not with suppression, but with inquiry. From whence this frequency? Does it align with my spark? In that pause, the chain slackens. The pleroma's light floods the fracture. Pause now. Place your hand on your heart. Exhale the held breath of guilt. Whisper, "This is not mine. I am the light beyond." Feel the shift. The divine spark, untouchable, begins to radiate, starving the parasites of their feast. But discernment alone is the spark. To sever the lines requires the blade of active rebellion. The Archons' emotional web is vast, but the Gnostic arts offer the shears, techniques forged in secrecy to reclaim what was erased. Third key, Gnosis as the blade, cutting the emotional feed of the Archons. The Gnostic masters, those exiles who preserved the flame amid inquisitorial pyres, knew the prison's weakness lay not in force, but in sight. The Pistis Sophia, another relic from Nag Hammadi's hoard, chronicles Sophia's fall and reclamation, a parable for every soul ensnared. The Church, in its zeal to centralize power, condemned such texts as fevered dreams, favoring gospels that elevated hierarchy over inner vision. Yet in the Archons' prison they erased, Gnosis emerges as the supreme blade, the direct Gnosis, unmediated knowing that exposes the Archons' deceptions and severs their emotional tethers. Gnosis is no abstract philosophy. It is the vigilant observer, the silent witness that stands apart from the mind's tumult. The traditional path, preached from pulpits gilded by Roman gold, demands blind faith, recite creeds, atone for guilts, suppress envies as sins, but the suppressed Gnostic path inverts this. Do not fight the emotions, for struggle feeds the parasites. Observe them as foreign signals, transmissions from the Demiurge's broadcast tower. Fear arrives as a storm cloud, dark, roiling, promising ruin. The Archon behind it seeks your identification. This is you, broken and small. Nous is the sky that holds the cloud, unchanging, vast. Envy slinks in as a thief, coveting another's glow. Guilt as a judge, tallying imagined debts. In the pleroma's light, they are but shadows cast by the false god's lantern, illusions craving your belief to persist. The Church's distortions served the Demiurge well. By externalizing salvation, through sacraments and saints, they kept Gnosis at bay, the people gazing outward while the prison tightened inward. Constantine's conversion was no divine spark. It was a merger of empires, burying texts that empowered the individual over the institution. Yet the divine spark endures, a fragment of the true source the Archons cannot forge or extinguish. To wield Gnosis is to reclaim it. Become the observer, the one who sees the transmission without subscription. When the wave of low frequency crashes, fear's cold grip, envy's bitter twist, guilt's leaden weight, do not dive in, step back. Witness, this arises, but it is not I. In that space, the frequency falters. The Archon's signal loses amplitude, starved of the energy it craves. Empowerment ignites here. Gnosis transforms victimhood into mastery. The soul, once looped in reactive chains, awakens as sovereign navigator. Feel the envy toward a sibling's path. It is the Archon's divide and conquer, a ploy to eclipse your unique spark. Gnos is the lens that reveals it as mimicry, unworthy of your light. Guilt over past shadows, a Demiurge echo, demanding repayment to a false ledger. With Gnosis, you audit the account, paid in full by Remembrance. And fear, the Great Warden. It dissolves in the Pleroma's expanse, revealed as the Archon's final bluff. But observation is the spark. To cut the cord requires technique, a three-step sovereignty to wield Gnosis as daily blade. Knowing the blade's edge is thrilling, but forging it in fire ensures the prison's gates swing wide. Fourth key, the three-step sovereignty. Practical Gnosis to sever the feed. The Gnostic path, preserved in fragments against the Church's erasure, from the flames of Alexandria to the edicts of Theodosius, was never for scholars in ivory towers, but for souls in the fray. The Gospel of Philip, another Nag Hammadi survivor, urges, truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in types and images. In the Archons' prison they erased, the types and images of emotional turmoil are the Demiurge's veils, but Gnosis unveils them through action. The traditional call to prayer, repetitive pleas to an external deity, merely reinforces the separation, a ritual that keeps the divine spark dim under the false god's gaze. The Gnostic rebellion, however, arms you with sovereignty, a three-step technique to observe, interrogate, and reclaim, turning transmissions into transmissions of your own light. Step 1. The pause of witness. When the low frequency surges, fear's icy flood, envy's corrosive bite, guilt's suffocating shroud, halt the momentum. Do not suppress or indulge. Simply pause. Inhale the breath of the Pleroma, that infinite plenum beyond the Archons' grasp. Exhale the contraction, creating space. This is the observer's throne. I see this arise. The Church ritualized pause as penance, a self-flagellation to appease the Demiurge's wrath. But Gnostic pause is power, a deliberate gap where the transmission meets resistance, its signal weakening like a radio wave in vacuum. Feel it now. Let a recent echo surface, perhaps a flicker of envy from yesterday's scroll. Pause. Witness without judgment. The Archon recoils from the light of attention. Step 2. The inquiry of origin. With the pause held, interrogate the source. Nose is not passive sight. It is piercing question. Is this mine or an echo of the prison? Trace the thread, not to blame the self, but to expose the foreign weave. Fear of failure. Probe, does it align with the divine spark's boundless potential, or does it echo the Demiurge's scarcity script, suppressed in Nag Hammadi to keep souls laboring in his forge? Envy's sting? Ask if it serves unity or fractures the Pleroma's wholeness. Guilt's ledger? Demand the false god's receipt. Where in the Gnostic Gospels does the true source demand debt? This inquiry is the blade's edge, honed by remembrance. The Archons, those frequency mimics, falter under scrutiny. Their illusions require your unexamined belief. In the early church's purge, Gnosis was the first casualty. Too empowering, too direct, for it invited every soul to audit the Demiurge's claims. Yet here, in your inquiry, you reclaim the audit, the spark flaring brighter. Step 3, the reclamation of spark. With origin exposed, reclaim, declare alignment with the pleroma. Speak the Gnosis aloud or in silence. This is not I am the light beyond. Visualize the divine spark, not a fragile flame, but a starburst igniting the veil, dissolving the transmission like mist in dawn. Anchor it with breath. Inhale the pleroma's fullness, exhale the residue into void. This is sovereignty's seal, the act that starves the Archons and reprograms the loop. The traditional absolution, confession to intermediaries, merely recycles guilt under the false god's ledger. Gnostic reclamation is liberation. You, the spark-bearer, dissolve the debt in remembrance's fire. Practice it now. Recall a guilt's shadow. Pause. Inquire. Echo of the prison. Reclaim. I am the pleroma's light. Feel the shift. The chain parts. Energy returns. The prison's echo fades. This three-step sovereignty is no esoteric relic. It is the Gnostic daily rite, a rebellion etched in every breath. The Church veiled it as mysticism for the elite, but Nag Hammadi democratized it for every soul ensnared. In the Archons' prison they erased, wielding Gnosis transforms victim into victor, the emotional web into a ladder to freedom. But remembrance alone stirs the spark. Collective ignition shatters the Demiurge's dome. As more souls inquire and reclaim, the transmissions weaken, the pleroma's chorus swells. You are not alone in this. Your Gnosis joins a rising tide, eroding the false god's foundations. Share this signal with a fellow seeker. Tag them in the comments. Whisper the inquiry. For when sparks unite, the prison they erased crumbles from within. The Archons, transmissions, those low frequencies masquerading as your own, are the Demiurge's last stand, a desperate bid to obscure the pleroma's call. Yet in the Archons' prison they erased, the premissa rings eternal. They said you were born to suffer. But the hidden secret of the soul's prison is that your breath is liberation's technology. Each inhalation defies the false god, a vibrational uprising that reminds you, you are the sovereign universe the Archons strain to confine. We have unmasked the weapons, forged the blade of Gnosis, and armed you with sovereignty's steps. No longer do fear, envy, or guilt hold sway. They are echoes, dissipating in the light of remembrance. You, bearer of the divine spark, stand at the threshold. The prison, once invisible, now glimmers with fractures, cracks widened by your inquiry, your pause, your reclamation. The pleroma awaits, not as distant paradise, but as the vastness you reclaim in every aware breath. The false god's broadcasts fade, for they cannot withstand the chorus of awakened souls. Feel it, the spark within you, untarnished, eternal, a beacon that no Archon can eclipse. Who are you beyond the transmissions, beyond the prison's echo? You are the light that erases illusions, the Gnosis that navigates realms, the rebellion that births new worlds. To seal this activation, to declare your sovereignty to the cosmos and join the network of sparks rising, go to the comments now. Write with full intention, I reclaim my spark from the false god. Not as words, but as decree. A vibrational anchor that severs the final threads. Share this with one soul still veiled. Tag them. Invite their remembrance. Subscribe to stand in this circle of light, for weekly Gnostic revelations await, each a step deeper into freedom. The veil thins, your breath commands it. The prison falls, and in its ruins, the pleroma dawns.